One ancient 7-minute sequence dissolves 10 years of cellular aging. 3 clocks, 3 systems, 1 switch. And the ancients built the sequence to flip it. Right now, inside your body, 3 separate countdowns are running simultaneously. You cannot feel them. You cannot see them. But they are eroding you in real time, and every year past 40 accelerates all 3. Clock 1. Your telomeres, the protective caps at the end of every chromosome, shortening with each cell division. When they reach critical length, the cell stops dividing. It becomes senescent. It begins poisoning the tissue around it. Biologists call this the Hayflick limit. Your cells are counting down to it right now. Clock 2. Your intervertebral discs. Each disc is a hydrated shock absorber, 80% water at birth, steadily desiccating. Every hour you spend upright, gravitational compression squeezes fluid out. You lose up to 19 millimeters of height by evening. By your 50s, the nucleus pulposus, the gel core, has lost so much hydration it can no longer distribute load. The disc cracks. The vertebrae collapse inward. The nerve roots compress. This is not metaphor. This is engineering failure happening slowly, invisibly, daily. Clock 3. Your cerebrospinal fluid. The brain generates approximately 500 milliliters of CSF daily. It circulates through the ventricles, surrounds the spinal cord, and during deep sleep, the glymphatic system uses it to flush amyloid plaques, tau proteins, and metabolic debris from neural tissue. But glymphatic function declines sharply with age, with poor sleep, and, critically, with spinal rigidity. When CSF stagnates, the brain marinates in its own waste. Cognitive decline accelerates. Inflammation spreads systemically. The body begins aging faster at the cellular level. 3 clocks. They appear unrelated. Chromosomal, structural, neurological. They are not unrelated. They are one loop. And the ancients encoded the switch to flip it inside a 7-minute sequence practiced at dawn, facing east, for 5,000 years. The decoded sequence. Surya Namaskar. Sun salutation. 12 postures. 6 bilateral pairs. This was not designed as a warm-up. It was engineered as a biological pump, a spinal wave generator that moves fluid, resets the autonomic nervous system, and activates the cellular repair machinery simultaneously. Pair 1. Pranamasana into Hasta Uttanasana. The ancients called this the opening of the Surya Nadi, the solar channel of the right body. Anatomically, the thoracic expansion in Hasta Uttanasana triggers vagal afferent firing. Cortisol drops within 60 seconds. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis shifts from catabolic to anabolic. Repair begins. Clock 1. The telomere clock responds to cortisol levels directly. Lower cortisol, higher telomerase activity. The ancients called it opening the solar channel. Molecular biology calls it cortisol-mediated telomerase suppression reversal. Same mechanism, different vocabulary. Pair 2. Uttanasana into Ashwa Sanchalanasana. Deep spinal flexion followed by full lumbar extension. The ancients identified this transition as the activation of the Muladhara to Vishuddha axis, root to throat, a full spine energy current. The disc mechanism is precise. Flexion compresses the anterior disc and creates a posterior pressure gradient, drawing fluid toward the nucleus pulposus. Extension reverses the gradient. The oscillation between pairs 2 and 5 creates a hydraulic pump. Clock 2. The disc clock requires this mechanical stimulus to rehydrate. Passive stretching does nothing. The compression-extension cycle is the pump. Pair 3. Phalakasana into Ashtanga Namaskar. The ancients called Ashtanga Namaskar the eight-limb salutation, a full-body prostration that activates the Prithvi Tattva, the earth element. Biologically, the isometric core engagement in plank position, Phalakasana, loads the thoracolumbar fascia under controlled tension. This primes the spinal extensors for the decompression that follows. Clock 3, CSF, depends on spinal tension and release cycling. The fascia is a hydraulic envelope. Load it correctly, release it precisely, and the CSF moves. Pair 4, Bhujangasana into Adho Mukha Svanasana. This is the core pump. This is the mechanism the ancients placed at the center of the sequence deliberately, not by accident. Bhujangasana, cobra, decompresses the lumbar spine, opens the thoracic vertebrae, creates anterior CSF pressure. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward dog, inverts the gravitational gradient, reverses venous pooling, forces blood from the lower extremities toward the cardiac return. The cranial pressure differential created by this inversion, even partial inversion, mechanically drives CSF through the ventricular system. Glymphatic function increases. Brain waste moves. A 12-week yoga-based intervention demonstrated measurable increases in telomerase activity, alongside elevated BDNF, sirtuin-1, and DHEAS, simultaneously reducing cortisol, interleukin-6, and DNA damage markers. All three clocks moved in the repair direction, all three simultaneously. Pair 5, Ashwa Sanchalanasana into Uttanasana, the mirror of pair 2. Second compression cycle. The disc hydraulics run a second full oscillation. The posterior fluid gradient forms again. The nucleus pulposus draws in its second wave of hydration. Clock 2 resets further. Clock 1 continues recovering. Cortisol remains suppressed through the sustained vagal state initiated in pair 1. The loop is reinforcing itself. Pair 6, Hasta Uttanasana into Pranamasana. The ancients called this the sealing of the prana circuit. The solar channel closes, the energy consolidates. Biologically, the closing thoracic compression signals the parasympathetic nervous system to consolidate the autonomic shift. Heart rate variability increases. The anti-inflammatory cascade, already initiated in pair 1, deepens. A single session produces measurable enhancement in both cardiorespiratory efficiency and cognitive function. Captured, measured, documented. The convergence. Stop. Before you continue, understand what you just heard. You were not learning 6 pairs of postures. You were learning one self-sustaining biological feedback loop that the ancients compressed into 7 minutes and disguised as a spiritual practice. Here is the loop. The spinal pump moves cerebrospinal fluid. The CSF movement activates glymphatic clearance. Glymphatic clearance removes neural waste. Neural waste removal reduces systemic inflammation. Reduced inflammation lowers cortisol. Lower cortisol activates telomerase. Telomerase extends telomere length. Longer telomeres preserve cell viability. Viable cells maintain disc matrix production. Disc matrix production preserves spinal hydration. Spinal hydration maintains the mechanical pump. The mechanical pump moves the CSF. One loop, one sequence, one code. The ancients did not build a stretching routine. They engineered a biological feedback loop disguised as a spiritual practice. Break any link, spine, fluid, or breath, and the loop collapses. Keep all three, and aging becomes optional. Every pair you heard in the last 3 minutes carries a different weight now. You weren't learning movements. You were learning the architecture of cellular time. The code. 7 minutes. 2 full rounds of Surya Namaskar at controlled pace. Each round, 6 minutes divided across 12 positions, approximately 30 seconds per position. Breath ratio. Inhale on extension, exhale on flexion, without exception. This is not preference. This is the pump timing. Breath is the metronome. Movement is the pump. Here is the only place the protocol fails. If your breath desyncs from the movement, the pump fails. The fluid stagnates. The loop collapses. The metronome stops. The pump dies. Do not perform this sequence while listening to audio. Do not rush through positions to hit a time target. The sequence is the code. The breath is the key. Without the key, you have exercise. With the key, you have biological override. If your spine cannot currently execute the full sequence, the loop cares about the pump, not the posture. A chair-supported variant, hands-on seat, modified lunge, wall-assisted inversion, still generates the compression-extension oscillation. The fluid still moves. The telomerase still responds. Modify the structure. Never compromise the breath-movement ratio. 2 rounds. Dawn. 7 minutes. That is the full code. If this sequence has existed for 5,000 years, and the science now confirms every mechanism, why were you never told? The same civilization that shelves telomerase research, that buries stem cell mobilization data, that calls this a yoga class instead of what it actually is, a biological override, does not want a population that can reverse its own aging with 0 equipment and 7 minutes. The single spinal wave decoded in the reverse aging video, that is the emergency reset. This sequence is the full protocol. Use the wave at night, the sequence at dawn. They were designed as one system. The code was never lost. It was hidden. You just found it. Type convergence if you're starting this tomorrow.